All right, this feels almost illegal to know, but our windows were so old and just desperately needed to be replaced. So I called a few contractors, but
Okay, it's not what I wanted. This is what I wanted. Okay, there we go. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Wednesday. All right, while we're waiting for folks to come in, work on your reflection question. I am going to show two review videos, but while we're waiting on everybody to come in, go ahead and work on your reflection question. Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. If you just came in, I said we're going to um, watch two review videos in a while, but in the meantime, work on your reflection question. Remember, use your notes, use your notes, use your notes. You need to have at least 2 sentences for each topic: age, height, ethnicity, dental records, and trauma. And again, this is not definitions because some of y'all take this as a definition. Like this is about you. Maybe I should have highlighted that. Give me 1 second. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to highlight this. Sometimes this is not a definition activity. I want you to take what they have told you on how to, and then you want to, okay, come back. Where is it? Okay, I'll highlight that. Highlight it. Let's see, it's a nice color. Pretty red. All right, yours. Make it bold. Okay. Your skeletal remains. Bold. And this. All right. Your discussion should include. There we go. All right. So I'm highlighting that so that we know that this is a story about you. We are not defining the terms. Okay. This is a story about you. You, a forensic anthropologist has discovered your skeletal remains. Not that I'm trying to kill off anybody. But God forbid that anything should happen to you right now. But if they were finding your skeletal remains right now, not 50 years from now, what would the story tell them? Good morning, good morning, good morning. All right. So again, for the work on that, as soon as I know that everybody is almost in, um, I have two videos that I want to share with you. Not a problem. I can't do that. That's something you have to do from your side, I think. I'm not able to see. I don't know why it's disabled, but I'm not able to do that. Okay. See, all right. Well, you're not the only one whose Zoom kicked you out. My Zoom just kicked me out and brought me back. So something happened. I know in my area, we had a power outage last night. All right, let me try sharing again. But William asked me to um, enable the grades. When on my side, I'm not capable of doing that. On my side, if I enable the grades, it's just going to take me to the grade book. So if you can't see your grades, that's Mr. Williams' question. I'm Kyle Williams, not you. But what was I doing? Assignment. I don't do that. Give me 1 second to get back to the share screen. Okay. All right, so everybody should be working on that right now. Still missing quite a few people, but they're late. They're late. All right, you could be thinking about that, and I wanted to share 2 videos with you this morning. Okay. All right, hold on. Let me stop sharing. I thought somebody said they couldn't hear it. So give me 1 second. Everything kind of went out on me. Here we go. All right, the sound wasn't on the share. Thank you for telling me that.
In Erie, Pennsylvania. It isn't plastic. It's made of real bones that belonged to a real person, but no one knows who that person was. Not the art teacher, Mrs. Leisure.
I have no idea where he came from. It could have been here for 100 years.
Not the principal, Mr. Vieira.
The lore is it came from the Ganges.
All right. And the reason I'm showing this one is because this is what you're doing right now with your reflection. So think about some of the activities that they are doing to determine all the information that they can about this skeleton, and let that inspire you in your story.
We consistently hear that it's male based on the bone structure.
And not my friend Alyssa Nadworth. She went to school here, and now she works with me at NPR.
When I found out my school had a human skeleton, I wanted to find out everything I could about it.
So here at Skunk Bear, we decided to see what science could tell us about these bones.
On TV, they always start with one thing.
Her DNA.
DNA sample?
DNA.
So we took the skeleton to a DNA expert at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History, Dr. Logan Kistler, and asked, can you get DNA from an old skeleton?
It's probably going to take 4 to 6 weeks of lab work and analysis. Probably cost up to about $5,000.
Okay, so no DNA analysis. We needed to find someone who could tell us something by just looking at the bones. So we went back to Erie, to Mercyhurst University, where we met Dennis Dirkmaat. He reads bones for a living, working with law enforcement to identify remains associated with crimes.
There's a lot of information to be told from the skeleton.
He called in some colleagues to measure every inch of our skeleton. First up, is this skeleton a man, like everyone thinks?
We usually start with the pelvis.
Females have broader pelvises to make childbirth easier, but this pelvis is kind of hard to interpret. It's somewhere in the middle. But there are more clues in other parts of the body.
A very clear marker is the mastoid process.
That's the bony bump where the jaw muscles attach to the skull. Men have bigger jaw muscles, so they have bigger bumps than women, and this skeleton has a small bump. And there are other clues too. The shape of the eye sockets, the brow ridges, the curve at the back of the skull.
All the features here indicate that this is female.
When we walked in here, we thought for sure this is a male.
Okay, next, was she young or old? To get an age, Dirkmaat's team looked at places where the skeleton's bones had fused. See, we're born with about 300 separate bones, but around the time we hit 40, we only have 206. That's because at specific times in our lives, certain bones fuse together. 2 plates at the front of the skull fuse in our first year. Our upper arm bone fuses in our teens. And then there's the clavicle.
There's a little line there that tells us that it's in the process of fusing. This is probably somebody 20 to 30, probably mid-20s.
Wow, I wasn't expecting it to be that young.
Next, her height. Dirkmaat's team took a few bone measurements and used them to calculate how tall she was.
This one came out just a little above 5 feet.
How tall are you?
5'1" or 2.
I'm 5'3".
This is sort of like almost you,
I know, it's really
in a way.
freaking me out.
The other aspect of the big 4 in our biological profile is the ancestry.
Dirkmaat's team compared her head measurements to a digitized database of skulls from around the world. And another surprise, the computer program says this skull looks most like a Japanese female. But there's a lot of uncertainty here, and the most Dirkmaat will say is,
It's probably Asian.
So we're starting to build a life story. This is a young woman who has Asian ancestry. So the next question is, where is she from? Did she grow up near Erie, where we found her? Or could she have lived in Japan? Or near the Ganges, like the principal heard? Well, I did some research, and it turns out that a lot of skeletons in medical schools, art schools, and high schools actually came from India. There was a shady but legal trade in human remains between India and the West that started in the 1800s.
so can we tell if this skeleton got here as part of that bone trade? These bones probably hold more clues. They're just hidden deep down in their very atoms. So we sent off a very tiny piece of bone to a geochemistry lab to see what they could tell us.
Hello, this is Kenneth calling from Penn State.
Hello!
Hey, Doug.
Kenneth is the guy who got our sample, dunked it in acid, burned it into a gas, and sorted its molecules in this giant machine.
Believe it or not, that gave us a clue about where she came from by telling us what she ate.
This is sort of an old adage that you are what you eat.
If you live where they eat a lot of stuff made from corn, like in Pennsylvania, your bones have one chemical signature. No corn, but a certain mix of land plants and animals, like you'd find in continental Asia, a different signature. And if you eat a lot of seafood, like you probably would in Japan, different again. So, what did the bones tell us? This woman's diet looked like this.
Probably not an island or a coastal environment. So certainly consistent with someone living in India, Pakistan, sort of Central Eurasia.
So she could have come from the Ganges region, and she could have been transported to the US via this bone trade, but only if the dates line up. Did she die when this bone trade was happening? Kennett's first step was to look for a chemical timestamp. Back in the 1950s, nuclear testing flooded the world with huge amounts of radioactive carbon.
We call it a bomb spike in the atmosphere.
And anyone who lived through it or was born after it has lots of that radiocarbon in their bones. But in our sample, Kennett didn't find this marker.
So we can say definitively that this person did not live after 1955.
But he was able to read more subtle markers to figure out when she did live.
The most likely interval that this individual lived was between 1875 and 1920.
So it kind of fits right in that timeline that these skeletons would be coming to the US. And it's so weird to think that, like, at the beginning of this process, it was basically a pile of bones on a string, and then the more you learn about it, it becomes this real person.
All this new information just underlines a bunch of really tricky questions. Should skeletons like these be used in classrooms at all? And if not, how should we lay them to rest? No lab test can tell us what any of these people believed in, or what they would have wanted.
Alright, so like I said, I showed that because that should help you a little bit with writing your story. I have another one. But before I say that, I'll show that one. One of the things they mentioned that we didn't talk about, and notice they had Beyonce all up in that picture too, was anybody who is, there we go, anybody who was born after 1955 would have radioactive carbon in their system. So it gets less and less. So, but most of you all were born in the 2000s. So it's only 2025. So somewhere along the way, there's a little bit of spike still in you. I guess I would have some. So that's one of the other indicators. They talked about, what's the other one? I put dental records on your list of things to do. They talked about you can tell what they ate by looking at the teeth. So mention that in your story too, what your teeth might tell us about what you like to eat. All right, so there was, so this one is, they had a list similar to the one that you are working with. And they called it the skeletal profile. So you are working with your skeletal profile. Okay. All right. One more video I want to share with you, and then I will let you make sure that you have time enough to finish your come on. It's probably going to go back to the commercial because I let it sit too long.
Guatemala is recovering from a 36-year armed conflict, a conflict that was fought during the Cold War. And it was really just a small leftist insurgency and a devastating response by the state. What we have as a result is 200,000 civilian victims, 160,000 of those killed in the communities, small children, men, women, the elderly even. And then we have about 40,000 others, the missing, the ones we're still looking for today. We call them the desaparecidos. Now, 83% of the victims are Mayan victims, victims that are the descendants of the original inhabitants of Central America, and only about 17% are of European descent. But the most important thing here is that the very people who are supposed to defend us, the police, the military, are the ones that committed most of the crimes. Now, the families, they want information, they want to know what happened, they want the bodies of their loved ones. But most of all, what they want is they want everyone to know that their loved ones did nothing wrong. Now, my case was that my father received death threats in 1980, and we left Guatemala, and we came here. So I grew up in New York. I grew up in Brooklyn, as a matter of fact, and I went to New Utrecht High School, and I graduated from Brooklyn College. The only thing was that I really didn't know what was happening in Guatemala. I didn't care for it. It was too painful. But it wasn't until 1995 that I decided to do something about it. So I went back. I went back to Guatemala to look for the bodies, to understand what happened, and to look for a part of myself as well. The way we work is that we give people information. We talk to the family members and we let them choose. We let them decide to tell us the stories, to tell us what they saw, to tell us about their loved ones. And even more important, we let them choose to give them a piece of themselves, a piece, an essence of who they are. And that DNA is what we're going to compare to the DNA that comes from the skeletons. While we're doing that, though, we're looking for the bodies. And these are skeletons by now. Most of these crimes happened 32 years ago. When we find a grave, we take out the dirt and eventually clean the body, document it, and exhume it. We literally bring the skeleton out of the ground. Once we have those bodies, though, we take them back to the city, to our lab, and we'll begin a process of trying to understand mainly two things. One is how people died. So here you see a gunshot wound to the back of the head, or machete wounds, for example. The other thing we want to understand, though, is who they are, whether it's a baby or an adult, whether it's a woman or a man. But when we're done with that analysis, what we'll do is we'll take a small fragment of bone and we'll extract DNA from it. We'll take that DNA and then we'll compare it with the DNA of the families, of course. The best way to explain this to you is by showing you two cases. The first is the case of the military diary. Now, this is a document that was smuggled out of somewhere in 1999. And what you see there is the state following individuals, people that, like you, wanted to change their country. And they jotted everything down. And one of the things that they wrote down is when they executed them. So inside that yellow rectangle, you'll see a code. It's a secret code, 300. And then you see a date. The 300 means executed, and the date means when they were executed. Now, that's going to come into play in a second. What we did is we conducted an exhumation in 2003 where we exhumed 220 bodies from 53 graves in a military base. Grave 9, though, matched the family of Sergio Saúl Linares. Now, Sergio was a professor at the university. He graduated from Iowa State University and went back to Guatemala to change his country. And he was captured on February 23rd, 1984. And if you can see there, he was executed on March 29th, 1984. Which was incredible. We had the body, we had the family's information and the DNA, and now we have a document that told us exactly what happened. But most important is about 2 weeks later, we got another hit, another match from the same grave to Amancio Villatoro. The DNA of that body also matched the DNA of that family. And then we noticed that he was also in the diary. But it was amazing to see that he was also executed on March 29th, 1984. So that led us to think, how many bodies were in the grave? 6. So we said, how many people were executed on March 29th, 1984? That's right, 6 as well. So we have Juan de Dios, Hugo, Moises, and Zoilo. All of them executed on the same date, or captured at different locations on different moments, all put in that grave. The only thing we needed now was the DNA of those 4 families. So we went and we looked for them and we found them. And we identified those 6 bodies and gave them back to the families. The other case I want to tell you about is that of a military base called Creon Paz. It actually means to believe in peace, but the acronym really means Regional Command Center for Peacekeeping Operations. And this is where the Guatemalan military trains peacekeepers from other countries, the ones that serve with the UN and go to countries like Haiti and the Congo. Well, we had testimony that said that within this military base there was bodies, there was graves. So we went in there with a search warrant, and about 2 hours after we went in, we found the first of 84 graves, a total of 533 bodies. Now, if you think about that, peacekeepers being trained on top of bodies, it's very ironic. But the bodies, face down, most of them, hands tied behind their backs, blindfolded, all types of trauma. These are people that were defenseless, that were being executed. People that 533 families are looking for. And so we're going to focus on grave 15. Grave 15, when we noticed, was a grave full of women and children. 63 of them. And that immediately made us think, my goodness, where's there a case like this? When I got to Guatemala in 1995, I heard of a case of a massacre that happened on May 14th, 1982, where the army came in, killed the men, and took the women and children in helicopters to an unknown location. Well, guess what? The clothing from this grave matched the clothing from the region where these people were taken from, where these women and children were taken from. So we conducted some DNA analysis, and guess what? We identified Martina Rojas and Manuel Chen. Both of them disappeared in that case. So now we could prove it. We have physical evidence that proves that this happened and that those people were taken to this base. Now, Manuel Chen was 3 years old. His mother went to the river to wash clothes, and she left him with a neighbor. That's when the army came, and that's when he was taken away in a helicopter and never seen again until we found him in grave 15. So now with science, with archaeology, with anthropology, with genetics, what we're doing is we're giving a voice to the voiceless. But we're doing more than that. We're actually providing evidence for trials, like the genocide trial that happened last year in Guatemala, where General Rios Montt was found guilty of genocide and sentenced to 80 years. So I come here to tell you today that this is happening everywhere. It's happening in Mexico right in front of us today, and we can't let it go on anymore. We have to now come together and decide that we are not going to have any more missing. So no more missing, guys, okay? No more missing. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so everybody needs to spend the rest of the time working on their self-reflection. And also, in preparing your self-reflection, you are also studying for the test. We are finished with this unit. We're testing this unit on Friday. So in addition to, let this be study time for you, as well as completing an activity. Make sure you've done your mystery of the bones. Make sure anything that for this unit is completed by Friday. And again, we are having, this is second period Tuesday. Tuesday, they put up the 9-week exam schedule. So Tuesday, September 30th is your 9-week exam. So put that on your calendar. If there's any questions about what you're to do and your self-reflection, please ask. Again, this is a story about you. You are not defining, giving me a textbook definition of how to discover age. I want to know, how would they discover your age? How would they discover your height? So that means you need to tell me what your age is. Tell me that at the end of the discovery, how tall are you? What your ethnicity is? what your dental records will explain, like they showed in the video, about what you like to eat. You know, how many, if you have fillings that if they took your dental records to the dentist, they would tell us how many fillings you have, if you had your wisdom teeth pulled, that sort of thing. And any trauma, that means any broken bones, something that they would notice about your bones. They mentioned certain bones that fuse together by the time they get to certain ages. So talk about those things. So again, there should be at least 2 sentences for each of these headings. Y'all like to ask me, how many sentences? How long should it be? At least. It can be more if you want to be real creative and with your story, but it should not be less. All right. Checking attendance. All right, 2 people who just joined us. Please check your video for the 2 videos that we showed today. Your playlist. Again, if you're missing anything, please make sure that it's done. We are coming up on the end of the 9 weeks, so if you have something missing, it's due by next week for sure, because we cannot go back into the grade book after that. And if there's something in particular that you need to get into that's closed, just let me know and I can open it again. You got to be specific about what you need me to open. Okie dokie. All right, folks, we got like 2 minutes left to class. Any questions? Any questions? All right, so make sure your reflection is in. We are going to do a test on Friday. So again, review the unit on anthropology, study of the bones. And if you have no questions for me, have a great Wednesday. Bye.